How's it going, guys? And yes, I did see Sonic 2, and I am pleased to say that this was really tremendous fan service of the highest order. I was super excited for this movie. I reacted to the trailer, and as you could tell, I was more inclined to see this than a lot of other movies right away. Is right at the top of my list. Not like there's a lot of other great movies to see, but this really delivered, in my opinion. I was a big fan of the first movie, and I know not everybody was completely sold on it. And I guess if you didn't like the first movie, well, there's sort of a chance that, like, if you thought it was okay, you might like this one better. I mean, if you thought the first one was a complete disaster and you didn't like the direction, you're probably not gonna like this one either. But I could be wrong. There were so many references in this one. I mean, it was just really insane, from showing Sega Genesis manuals, from Eggman's assistant, Stone, holding up a manual that clearly had that classic black and white grid from the Genesis manuals that I looked at hundreds of times back in the day as a kid. All little different references, and some of these were way more direct from the first one, which is kind of why I would say that maybe there is a chance that those that were not completely sold in the first might like the sequel, because they definitely went all in with this. And before I get into it, we never do spoiler-free reviews here on this channel, so there's going to be a shitload of spoilers in this one. So, all the different references need to be talked about. We had the Death Egg, we had fucking Super Sonic showing up, and of course, this is not the movie itself per se, but in the end credit scene, Shadow the Hedgehog was revealed, and you could only imagine what kind of crazy Sonic Adventure 2 sort of retelling we're gonna get there. So this was, first and foremost, the story of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Definitely a lot of liberties were taken with it, but that's understandable. We're basing this on a Genesis game. Now they have adapted it from the comics, so there's no Angel Island, there's no floating island. Let's just get that out of the way. There's nothing like that happening. But they did do a pretty good job of explaining this. It's, Knuckles is not the guardian of the emerald. Instead, he's looking for the Master Emerald. And this is basically, that is the MacGuffin for the movie, the Master Emerald. And that is what Knuckles is seeking. And this is something that I like that we got this backstory, because it was very mysterious in the beginning. We saw Echidnas. We saw Master Echidnas in the beginning of the first movie back in 2020, and this piqued my interest. And we all knew we were going to get Knuckles in the sequel. It's funny, a lot of people, I was going back and seeing some people, being retrospective about the first film leading up to the sequel, and they were talking about, Longclaw. She was in the first movie for 5 minutes. She's Sonic's guardian. She raised Sonic, and, everyone was kind of like, well, she gets killed off super fast. And now we kind of see this is a thing between the owls and the echidnas, and this leads to finding the Master Emerald. It's actually in one of the ancient temples that belong to the owls, and they placed on Earth for some weird reason, but this is kind of part of the destiny of Sonic, to go to Earth, and why Longclaw wanted him to be there. Obviously from the first to second movie, I don't know if they had this completely mapped out. We now see that there was a purpose to the map that Sonic had previously looked at in the first movie. So there's nice that there's like a lead in there. We're kind of repurposing the first movie and making for a nice bridge between the two. But I'll be honest, I did not watch the first movie before going into this. I prepped myself up with like Sonic music and stuff like that on my phone during my commute to and from work and stuff like that. And But, you know, I did not watch the first movie. I don't know why. I just wasn't in the mood, but I definitely need to go back and watch it. But definitely, from what I remember, good lead in there. I liked it. And it's really fun. This is not a movie where you should be breaking down the story and looking for, like, plot holes and inaccuracies. Because I'm sure if you put it under the microscope, you definitely could find them. But we got to talk about these characters. The portrayal of these characters was just amazing to me. Idris Elba, holy shit, what an amazing Knuckles. And it just makes so much sense for him to have that accent of Idris Elba's when he's a tribesman. I mean, it just makes sense to me. You know, it really does. I don't know if everyone else agrees with that. I already was a fan of Ben Schwartz since the first movie. I think he was a good pick. I think he definitely has that style of voice of Sonic. Obviously, everyone has their favorite Sonic when it comes to the voice, you know, but I'm not saying Ben Schwartz is my favorite, but I think for film adaptation, it was a good choice. Colleen O'Shaughnessy from the current games reprises her role in the movie, which blew me away. Because I thought, you know, that's pretty much kind of like almost like a weird, strict, maybe unwritten rule where we don't recast the same voices of characters in these movies, you know. So that's was a huge surprise to me, and definitely great because she seemed to have no problem going full length here in this movie. And I don't see why. I mean, because, you know, we're basically making mini movies in the Sonic games half the time, you know, especially like in games that have like really big stories. So it was great to see her take on this role. I know in a movie's a different format, you know, it's definitely a longer format, more consistent format. And this film definitely it featured the, you know, Sheriff Tom a little bit less. They did get them out of the way. They kind of got them into a wedding in Hawaii. You know, his wife's sister, Rachel from the first movie, you know, we remember her, you know, the one that was freaking out over Sonic. Well, now she's getting married to some dude, and we eventually find out that he's an agent for Gun. And this is the lead in the introduction of Gun into the Sonic series. Some of my favorite parts that I really have to talk about here is when they come upon the Owl Temple, where this is where the Master Emerald is, and it comes out of the water. It looks so majestic. It's really a beautiful scene. But when they get into the temple and we see Eggman coming in there with Knuckles, and this is something that I really liked. I liked that they stuck with the Sonic 3 story, how, you know, Eggman is using Knuckles. Now, if you're a longtime Sonic fan, you would know this is not the first time that he has tricked old Knucklehead. He's even tricked him in Sonic X, I think maybe twice in that show. And it even became like a running gag, like how many times can Knuckles, you know, get tricked by Eggman? And we even hear like Agent Stone saying, you know, he's an imbecile. And there was a lot of good jokes in this movie. And Jim Carrey is just so amazing in this role. The interpretation, you know, a lot of people, I saw this, you know, throughout the past 2 years talking about this role and Jim Carrey reprising his role as Eggman. A lot of people said that, like, well, he's just basically playing Jim Carrey. And, like, you know, I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what does that even really mean? You know, Jim Carrey has an acting style, but Jim Carrey doesn't act like this, you know, in the real world, in the outside world. He doesn't act like the Riddler, you know, he doesn't act like the Mask, you know, he doesn't act like Ace Ventura, you know, he's not going, oh yeah, can you feel it, you know, like when he goes out to dinner. I mean, so I don't really know what people mean that. I mean, look, I understand what people mean. He has a similar acting style of being over the top, but like, that's just kind of who he is, and many other actors have a similar acting style they're known for. And, you know, I think that's very, like, unfair, because I feel like people are saying he's very one note when the man is very varied, and, you know, the numerous facial expressions and mannerisms that he does. I mean, I think it really discredits the role. And I kind of sort of think it's disrespectful in a way, because, I mean, you can clearly see when you see this role from Jim Carrey in every movie. And someone put up an amazing meme that I saw today. Like, no matter what movie that you were watching, whether you thought Batman Forever sucked to high heaven or you thought it was one of the best of all time, you knew that Jim Carrey was giving his performance at 110%. And in these two Sonic movies, it's been no different. I think the man is a marvelous actor. I think he's a man that really hones his craft to a T and always delivers. And you know, when you're watching these scenes with Carrey, like, there's no way that a lot of this stuff could be scripted. I think a lot of these jokes, a lot of these gags that are done, I think a lot of them are Carreyisms without a doubt. And if that is the case, I'll be really shocked if they are scripted, like they're actually written on paper, like, Jim, we want you to do this now. I think Carrey, being the veteran comedic actor that he is, I think can pull enough weight where he can pretty much say if he wants something done in a different way, and whatever the case may be, he does it to perfection. So, one of these scenes, though, that I truly loved was, seeing him and Knuckles going through this ancient temple and all the booby traps. And, I kind of really liked how you had Carrey, as Eggman, slide this little line in there, and you would kind of miss it through all the chaos that's going on in a way. But, we see spears coming out. There's a fucking spiked bull that's chasing after them. You're like Raiders of the Lost Ark without a doubt. Now, I know a lot of the kids are not going to get that, and there was tons of kids in the theater. But Eggman goes, I hate this. It's so derivative. Without actually doing like a Indiana Jones like music cue or something along those lines. Can you imagine if Knuckles had his hat from the OVA? I mean, we'd really be getting Raider vibes then, but, I digress. But I thought that was a good way of, like, an example of how they do kind of like an in-joke. And there's tons of pop culture references. And for the most part, they work for me. I know a lot of people don't like pop culture references. Some people say it's cringe. And people's reaction to humor in the first film was all over the place. Some people loved it. Some people really disliked and didn't care for it much. I think that it's pretty cleverly written. I truly do. I mean, I think that, like, they keep it moving. And even though all the jokes are not going to make you burst out in massive amounts of laughter, it's not like every single joke would be firing on all cylinders at all times, but they're always, gonna put you in a good mood. This is a movie that uplifts your spirits, and I think, like, all the fight scenes with Sonic and Knuckles, I mean, they delivered. I mean, this is what you expect. If you're a fan like me of the old Archie comics and, you see these guys fighting, it instantly captures your attention. There's no more of a classic battle than, besides Sonic versus Eggman or Sonic versus Shadow, Sonic versus Knuckles is where it's at. I mean, that was, back when I was a kid, the fight, the rivalry that everybody always loved, because, I know a lot of people nowadays think of Sonic and Knuckles as being like allies together, but you could even see in the comics, like, I always loved that dynamic where, yes, he realizes that, Eggman, that Robotnik is a jerk and everything, but I always like that dynamic where, Knuckles is just that guy who's so stubborn and set in his ways that even if he is a friend, you don't know if he's friend or foe, because he really doesn't like Sonic. He doesn't like Sonic's ego. And I thought, well, that was something that was really well conveyed in the Archie comics, but, like, here it seems like in the movie that they're going to be full-on pals and Sonic has a family, and I like that. The way that they did it, it didn't really seem like forced, like, oh, we're pals. Like, you see kind of Knuckles kind of getting it, where he, decides that there's this scene where he doesn't go for the compass. Knuckles observes Sonic tending to an injured Tails, and he brings this up to Eggman, saying, like, well, he didn't go after the compass, so he, kind of questions it, like, does he really want the Master Emerald that badly? And you can kind of see where he thinks he's getting played, and I think they did a really good job of, like, making that dynamic stand out from like the Sonic 3 story. So I thought it was really well told, and this retelling, I think it really did stay true to the lore. Even though they shifted things around and moved it around, I think the core basis of that lore, you know, it's not like this is such a robust lore, because like I said, from the games to the comics, and you know, you play Sonic 3 and you have a very, very skimpy story. Like if you're not reading the manual, you know, you don't know a lot about what's really going on in terms of the story, aside from little cutscenes that are like in game. So, you know, you could take so many liberties with this. I mean, you know, the Archie comics are not exactly canon to the games, you know, nor was like the Sonic SatAM or the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, there's been so many retellings. You know, this is like with a lot of different franchises. We could sit around all day and talk about what's canon and what's not, and you know, but I think they really did a good job, and even more so of like getting this series on track and showing us like where they need to go with it. And like going back to like that temple scene, I really like that they showed like Sonic in his element, because when it's time to go through the temple, I felt like we were going through like one of the zones. You know, like it kind of reminded me of sort of like, well, like Marble Zone. You know, you see one of these like spiked pillars come out of the wall as Sonic is charging down a corridor, and I'm like, oh, you know, these little references are just great. And then when they finally reveal the Death Egg robot, I mean, that to me is just astounding. Like, and that does look very game accurate. It might be a slightly different color scheme, but I mean, you know what it is. And then when Sonic finally goes super, it's really well done. And you know, you think for a moment, well, maybe it's not going to happen because the Master Emerald falls apart. And then it falls into 7 pieces, and then we've got like 7 Chaos Emeralds right there. So I liked how they did that. You know, taking liberties and everything, you know, with the... I know there's probably going to be a lot of, you know, Sonic purists, whatever that means, that are going to be screaming their heads off about how the Master Emerald, you know, just broke apart into 7 different ones. There's going to be like a few weirdos out there that are going to have a huge, massive problem with that in a Sonic movie, you know. Like I said, there's been so many different tellings. There's no real, like, origin story to Sonic. Like, I've always pretty much, like, just kind of followed the Archie comics because that's what I know. That's, like, what I think of. You know, there's some people that still go by, like, the Kintabor story from, like, the old Sonic Bible. You know, that was even the thing for, like, the Sonic UK comics. You gotta, like, look into it. There's so many different things that like Sonic doesn't really have an official origin story. It's open to interpretation. So all these things that are happening, like, you know, they could have really went in any direction. It doesn't really mean it's right or wrong. I mean, we see the timeline, you know, it's all over the place. Then crazy things are happening all the time, and it's not really like things always make 100% sense. And that's like almost any single video game series. Even the ones that do appear to have a more coherent timeline even have problems keeping things straight. But, you know, I was pretty happy with the way how things went. And yeah, no, they like I said, they do keep the human characters out of it more than the first movie, without a doubt. I mean, unless I'm wrong about that, and we could add up the minutes, I mean, you could kind of tell that they're getting them out of the way with the whole wedding angle and getting them off to Hawaii, like, just so they could get them off. And, you know, I guess that was for the people that complained that maybe there was too much of that buddy cop dynamic. Well, that buddy cop dynamic is pretty much gone. You know, human characters, Tom and his wife, you know, Maddie, they get and even Rachel get their time to shine in the end. You know, and like I said, and we get Gunn. We see that they're undercover. That the guy that Rachel's even marrying, he's even a gun agent. You know, just so they could kind of get to the source of what's going on. They pull an ET and capture Sonic. So there's your little lead-in right there. There's your little Sonic Adventure 2 reference as they capture Sonic, much like they did in the game. You know, so they were throwing a lot of different references around, and tons of others. Definitely another one of my favorites that I have to mention here is the ice cap zone reference, the snowboarding, which was featured in Sonic 3 and the original Sonic Adventure. I mean, that scene was just beautiful, seeing them do that. Different environments. I mean, we moved around this movie. We saw locales that felt very Sonic-ish. There's and there's also fun scenes. Like I kind of know, I thought this scene was personally funny, but as I was watching this scene, I know in the back of my head, I know one scene that a lot of people are probably going to have problems with, and that's going to be the dance scene. When they go into that bar, cabin, restaurant, while they're in Siberia. You damn well know when they had that dance off with that guy who challenges them so they could get the map back and leave there alive after Tails inadvertently insults the waitress. You know that people are going to have a problem with the dance off. I thought it was funny. I thought it was cute. I thought it was charming. And I think that's something that definitely fits into the Sonic universe because, well, hell, once again, have you ever read the Archie comics? Have you ever watched The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog? Are you telling me that a dance-off is completely out of the question in a Sonic movie? But I just know people are not going to like that for some reason. I just kind of feel it because that's always like a split thing, like when they have those sorts of scenes where they get kind of silly, where people have it. I was getting big time Pee-wee's Big Adventure vibes right there. The bar scene, instead of tequila, and obviously we're, doing different kind of like break dancing and stuff like that here. It definitely had those vibes, where Pee-wee thinks he's gonna die in Big Adventure, and they're like threatening to fucking throw him in a fire. Other little references that, like, I'm just thinking of stuff off the top of my head, aside from the ones that I wrote down. Like, we see, like, when they're in the temple, we see Sonic, like, breathing in an air bubble. And I was like, should they have had the wah-wah sound, We also saw, like, this was, like, a really obscure reference, but a pillar falls on top of Knuckles, and Sonic kind of gives the 3, 2, 1, and I was like, was that supposed to be like the drowning countdown? Because he is about to drown. That was pretty obscure, but I guess you could check that off as a reference as well on the long list of references. So, as you could clearly tell, I enjoyed myself here. I thought that, this was the ultimate in fan service. I think, like, this probably has more fan service than most, like, superhero movies and a lot of other things. I don't know. Like I said, I have not really read a lot of, like, regular superhero comics in the past few years because I just fucking hate, like, the new comics. That's, why I said, like, I've told you guys, like, I read the Dragon Ball Super Magna. I go back and read old school comics, not into the new stuff. But, I don't know, like, how. I know there's a lot of fan service in the Marvel movies all the time and stuff like that, but, like, to me, like, to get this level of fan service in a video game movie, this is something totally unprecedented. Like, they really went all out here, and I'm very appreciative of it. This seemed like a labor of love to me, and as being a big Sonic fan, obviously, that it goes without saying that I thought, is it a masterpiece? Is it like an amazing work of cinema? I wouldn't go that far, but I'm just saying, for an entertaining, movie, for a good time, for a good laugh. I mean, I'll definitely go back and watch this again, when it's streaming. I really did enjoy it quite a bit. And, if you're a Sonic fan, if you enjoyed the first movie especially, I think you will too. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know, did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Were you somewhere in the middle? We'll discuss it down in the comments, guys. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bells to get all notifications when I post all my new videos. And I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. And I'll see you next time, guys.